inside the kit, and on page 15 right through to page 19 is where we pull apart all the different stages. So I've pulled them apart and looked at all the different examples. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on standard 2, which is on page 15. It starts, that's right here. So standard 2, know the content and how to teach it. How do you engage with the content? Are you professionally updating your knowledge of the curriculum? Do you participate in PD? Are you working with a mentor? Do you attend weekly meetings? So you need to expand and discuss this. So how do you know the content and how to teach it? So when you're participating in weekly meetings, you're actually working alongside mentors. This is things that you can mention and how often you've attended them and at what practicums you attended those things. Okay, do you work whole class? Do you do group work? Do you do independent tasks? Know the content and how to teach it. Look at literacy rotations. Take the opportunity inside your practicums or inside any teaching opportunities to run some of these groups. Then you can take photos of you running the groups. Then you can put it in your portfolio that you take to any of your teacher interviews, and then you can also expand on it when you're looking at your selection criteria. So knowing the content and how to teach it. Teaching through literacy groups and literacy rotations, that's something that they would be looking at for there. To evaluate best practice, maximum learning. So this sort of thing is getting any feedback from your mentor or getting peer assessment. Examples of teaching strategies that you have implemented or trialed. So when you're looking at teaching mindfulness, okay, when you're looking at implementing different literacy rotation spelling activities, whether they're hands-on, whether they're verbal, whether they're written tasks, whether they're individual based, whether you're doing drill and practice on the board, okay? You need to talk and give examples that link to that. List engaging teaching activities that you have designed. Are there any activities that you've physically designed and trialed inside the classroom? Is there anything that you've seen on the internet and went, wow, that looks really exciting, and you've gone into your classroom and given it a go? You've given it a go in your practicum areas. So mention those. How do you program sequentially? Providing examples. So this is where you go, I'm going to teach a unit of work, and you implement it over a series of times. So the sequential lessons, and you might do 2 sessions a week for 3 weeks. Okay, so again, inside your practicums, make sure you plan this, or if you're inside doing your lessons and you are a grad teacher, make sure you're doing this, and then you can put it inside and mention that, okay? Even if you're doing any work casually, if you're doing some tutoring, okay, where have you had the opportunity to program sequentially? And it can be in maths, it can be in literacy. They're not asking here for a specific topic. If the selection criteria is referring to a certain topic, then make sure you align it with that. But here they're not, okay? How do you use or implement ICT in the classroom? Okay, one really cool thing that I do is there is a free resource on Design by Teachers, and I'll try to find the link and pop it in here. And there's an ICT program where they can check themselves in. So this is a great time management strategy where the students actually do like a roll check. So they mention that they're here. This saves you time of going and doing a whole roll. It invites them to be interactive, and it's also using ICT in the classroom. Okay, so do you do any culminating activities? So the end result is publishing any narratives or stories that you do, okay? Do you do eggy words? Are there any apps that you like to use? Do you do mind mapping, using some of the mind mapping apps? So any experience in relation to apps is a good one for there. So list specific relevant examples of your use of assessment to evaluate your effectiveness of teaching. So this is where you're looking at mentors. This is where you're looking at student feedback forms. This is where you're looking at peer-to-peer assessment, okay? This is where you can do a assessment at the end. Once you've taught a topic, you have all the students and you can ask them what they've learned. And you need to take a recording of this and look at what the students have actually reflected upon, and then look at what your learning goals were and see if they marry up. If they don't marry up, then somehow the information or the lesson that you planned has crossed over, or perhaps you took the learning activity in a different direction, so the learning goal actually needs to be adjusted there. So that's what they're talking about as an example there that we've come up with. Provide clear examples of summative and formative assessments and processes you use. So this is looking at how you evaluate along the way, so whether you're doing units of study, so whether you're looking at all the different areas. So providing in your portfolio samples, whether you're doing charting their progress with reading and how many words a minute they read or the levels they're going up, whether you are charting their mindfulness growth. So you need to be charting, and a summative means a collective amount of information. Formative assessments, they can be formalized tasks, so you need to expand on that. How do you professionally remain aligned with modern assessment techniques? What are you doing? What are you actively pursuing to make sure you're aligned with the professional standards? That's what they're talking about there. How do you report to your students, parents, and peers? So how do you give back? How do you give feedback to those three areas? Do you use communication books? Do you use a parent-teacher newsletter? I will be teaching a really savvy way in the workshops of how you can create an actual website every year and keep a lot of information about what goes inside your classroom and have a really cool, funky way of communicating with your parents, which is professional. It saves you time, and it's really, really a great process to set up, and it's a lot of fun. But that's later on. How do you provide opportunities for students to learn respectfully about Indigenous culture? How are you embracing the Indigenous culture? Okay, do you involve the community members? If you haven't done this topic, I invite you to. It's a really exciting Indigenous topic. There's great resources on Design by Teachers in this area that you can incorporate. Story time, dream time. There are a lot of reading books for students that you can do, and you can actually do full units of work, and you can also incorporate other KLA areas, so key learning areas. So this is really exciting, this topic, and describe the importance of assessment and evaluation when reviewing your own methods of teaching and effective teaching. So again, making sure that you can assess what the students have learned. They can provide you with feedback and provide you with information with what they've learned during a reflective process at the end of the session or at the end of your unit of work. And then look at your learning goals, which you said at the beginning of the content. So making sure they marry up, and if they're not, how are you reflecting and adjusting these? Okay, that's the kind of thing they're looking there. So that is just a small amount of examples linked to Standard 2, which you'll find in our kit. And like I said, we actually pull apart all 7 standards in the kit.